catch one of the very able individuals in this house who has contributed quite a bit, and I sit with him in the finance committee, and I'm proud of him, and I'm happy. The issues he has raised are quite substantive, and many people may not see them. My leader, my friend, my brother, Honorable Okiya Omtata, Kenya will vindicate you. You have consistently raised these issues even before I came to the Senate. Some of us did not understand the weightiness and the importance of raising this issue. Senator Omtata, thank you for noticing that we need to separate the central bank and the treasury from the executive. That is, in fact, one of the challenges that we are going to face as a committee, and we are going to interrogate this. I also want to give credit to my brother, Honorable Mungatana. Thank you, sir. Your experience and time enables you to analyze these issues impassionately. I believe that what you have discussed will make Kenya a better place. Mr. Speaker, the public debt management issue in our country is at a crisis level. The reason why I say this is because, Mr. Speaker, we have been looking, analyzing, discussing what is the cost of our debt? Why do we borrow so much money? Why is it that we, in the last 10 years, close to 12 years, we've actually increased our debt by 100%? When President Kibaki was President of the Republic of Kenya, our debt was, by the time he was living, 1.1 trillion shillings. After that period, and you look at where we are right now, our debt is close to 12 trillion. And the question that you ask when you sit in this house, what is it that we need to do to make sure that this exercise, which I personally call an exercise in futility, where we are borrowing excessively, where in fact we are borrowing domestically, Mr. Speaker, where the interest rates at which we are borrowing government money, state funds, you are now at about, some of the banks are giving us money at 12%, 16%. I am told one of the loans was borrowed at 18%. And yet, Mr. Speaker, you know that we can borrow money globally at the cost of 2%. We can actually reschedule Kenya's debts. All of them, all our debts can be rescheduled. We can go to the international money market. We can borrow at interest rates between 2 and 4%. And we can pay out all our debt, stock of debt, and make sure we begin afresh. These are the issues that I would want the committee to look at, and I would want this House to look at. Number two, Mr. Speaker, there was a basic operating standard procedure on how we used our borrowed money. What did we do, Mr. Speaker? The money would come. Normally, the rates at which we borrowed was at 30-70. Like Senator Edia said, domestically, we would borrow at 30%, because when you borrow domestically, then for the ordinary business person or the ordinary Kenyan, borrowing in commercial banks becomes more expensive, and the banks do not want to lend to ordinary business people. Why? Because of the cost of risk. The risk of where a commercial enterprise might borrow money and not deliver. So what happens is that commercial banks prefer when bills, bonds, and stocks is what they trade in, and the government is very comfortable with that. Why? I'm sure my brother Eddie and many other leaders here have talked about it. When you go and negotiate with a commercial bank and you are borrowing 1 trillion shillings, and this commercial bank is actually giving you this money at a certain percentage, information and data gets to us where people in government will go and negotiate with some of these commercial banks, and they will even enable these commercial banks, after they have borrowed money for the government, to allow the commercial bank to do overnight lending, where interest rates are delivered, are earned, and we never discussed these issues openly until recently when Okiya Omtata started discussing it. Why do we borrow? Mr. Speaker, we borrow because sometimes our budget has got gaps. Previously, the Kenyan government position, if you look at when Saitoti was the Minister for Finance, come up to President Kibaki and move on, you will realize that we were borrowing when we would need a stopgap measure where we would borrow most probably 5% or whatever that the balance was, and then our budget would be balanced, and we would keep on moving as the economy was growing. What happened? Now we borrow for big projects. We borrow for those projects where billions and billions, not Kenyan shillings, billions and billions, Mr. Speaker, of American dollar funding is what we are dealing with. As a result, the money that was supposed to deal with the basic issues of our governance, basic issues of our very existence. How do we handle the health sector? How we are handling our education? How are we handling our agriculture? The very basic sectors of our economy that are meant to deliver for the Kenyan public. We then decide, no, we are going to take this money and do these big-time projects. Why? Because the big-time projects is where we get our kickbacks. That is where we generate our revenue by arguing and saying, no. You don't have to spend any money in farming. Look for something big that you can do, so that then that is where the money is shared, and that is where we really don't even have to work very hard about this. Why? Because even if we borrow, we'll be able to pay this money anyway. The problem we have, soon, we are not going to be able to pay this money because we are at 68%. If by next year we are going to borrow another 1.2 trillion like we did last year, the reality is soon we are going to be at 90%, and then after that Kenya will just become like Thailand. We will not pay our debts back. We will not be able to pay salaries. The economy will just become it will become a supermarket. Essentially, what does a supermarket do? We become consumers. Then you don't have to worry about agricultural development and growth. You don't have to worry about your health sector. In fact, we as a people will then now begin thinking about, are we taking our patients to Rwanda, which is a country that is operating their health facilities better than ours? Or are we going to educate our children in Rwanda, where the kids are going to school achieving the grades they want? The educational sector is actually teaching mathematics. And what do we do in our country? We are now saying we don't even have to allow kids to learn maths. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a passionate plea to my colleagues in this House. The responsibility of fixing the mess we are in falls